We just returned from 2 weeks in the United States, spending Christmas with our families, and while we were there are some things that we hadn't noticed we'd gotten used to while living in Germany, and also some things after living our whole lives in the United States that we had never noticed about life in the US that kind of shocked us.
Reverse culture shock is when you have been away from your familiar culture and then you come back to it and you just realize things that you had never noticed before about it. And we've seen some pretty dramatic definitions about what it is, but we did identify with the things that once were familiar, now seeming a little unfamiliar.
And there were some videos that I had seen on YouTube before and other people talking about reverse culture shock whenever they go home, and I've always kind of dismissed it thinking, you're being overly dramatic, or you're just showing off that you travel all the time. So that's why it was a little bit shocking whenever we got back and I realized that it's actually a real thing. And there were some things also about being back in the US that aren't necessarily culture shocks, but we just hadn't realized that we had gotten used to and accustomed to living abroad, and going back home, it just kind of threw us off a little bit.
One of the biggest things that I didn't realize I had gotten really used to here in Germany was the difference in their work-life balance and how things completely shut down on holidays and for the most part shut down on Sundays as well. So one of the first things that we did when we were at home was we went and got flu shots. This was on Christmas Eve and this place was packed. There were so many people at this Walgreens, a lot of people working and a lot of people there shopping and getting things done. Also, one Sunday, I thought about, I need to go run errands, but it's Sunday, I can't go do that. But then I realized, no, everything's open here. We can go do whatever we need today.
Yeah, there was a lot of people too in the Walgreens that we overheard that were talking about how they were trying to do some last minute Christmas shopping, and they had gone from store to store to store, and they were talking to each other about just, wow, don't go to this store, don't go to that store, because it's just crammed with people right now. And that's something that, like Aubrey was saying about the work-life balance, that we think that Germany does seem to have a little bit of a better perspective on, and it's that time spent away from work with families or with friends, or just simply just getting away and just relaxing, and they take that time for themselves rather than constantly work like in the US.
However, it is pretty convenient that things are open all the time. Like on Christmas Day, whenever we forgot an ingredient for something that we were making, we were able to go to the grocery store because it was open.
It's pretty common in the US too for people to get just Christmas Eve or Christmas Day off, or even just Christmas Day. And a lot of people will try to take their vacation time, which it gets complicated whenever you only have 2 weeks and you end up having to use it around your Christmas vacation. Therefore, you don't really have anything for the rest of the year. We've had some family who on Christmas Day were having to debate whether they would go back into work the next day or not. They had taken off, but they weren't sure if they should go in. But that's just kind of what happens in the US when it comes to work, is you have to end up figuring out, do I spend time with my family on the holidays, or do I drive back home so I can get to work the following day? Whereas here in Germany, we've seen that the legal holidays given by the government is Christmas Day and the day after Christmas. But from our experience of just looking around town before we took off to go back home from the States, really a ton of things were shutting down, if not for the whole week, but for multiple weeks. Our car is already in the mechanic shop. It's a whole story we don't want to get into. But the mechanic called just a few days before the first weekend before Christmas and said that they would be shutting down for the next 2 weeks. Not just that the mechanic was taking a vacation for 2 weeks, but the entire business was shutting down for 2 weeks, and they would not get to our car until they got back from that break.
Growing up, a lot of times my family would go see a movie on Christmas Day, and it was really fun and I really enjoyed doing that, but now I feel kind of bad because that means someone had to work on Christmas Day.
Being back in the States, we also saw the very common stereotype in America, and especially the South. In Oklahoma, where we're from, was the hospitality and also just people talking all the time to each other, even if they don't know each other. A common stereotype about Germans, and it's actually pretty true, is that they do not enjoy small talk. And you can see that a lot whenever you go into stores, and when you go into a German store, it is very business. You walk in, they ask what you need, you tell them, they get it to you, and then you're out. It's very efficient. But in the US, we noticed it being a little bit different. For instance, whenever we went to Walgreens to get our flu shots, we ended up staying around for a little bit while longer because the nurse who gave us the shot wanted to talk to us for a while. We talked about traveling in Europe, her past trips that she went on in Italy, and her experiences, and ours also traveling. It went on for a long time, and then that just kind of went across the board in a lot of the places that we visited. It's just people stopping to talk, going into a gas station to go to the restroom, and the clerk standing there and asking, how are you? And then, how's it going? And talking and talking. It was just very friendly everywhere that we were going.
Along those lines, I also enjoyed being able to understand what people are saying all around me. I think we kind of got used to not being able to understand what people are saying. Donnie's been learning German, but I still haven't yet, and that's the goal of mine. But usually when we're out and about, I don't know what people are saying. But while we were at home, I was able to kind of hear conversations, know what's going on around me, and eavesdrop a little bit.
If you've been watching our videos, one thing that you know is that we just recently bought a car here in Germany, and we've been able to drive quite a bit on the roads here, and we have gotten spoiled with the German drivers here. They are extremely good drivers, and I would even dare to say they are much more superior than American drivers. Not just superior, but much more superior. And that's one thing that we noticed whenever we were driving around in the US. It's just the dangerous driving habits that I had never really noticed before. Maybe I just thought it was normal. But like things like people sitting in the left lane on the highways and just driving incredibly slow, and people doing dangerous swerving maneuvers to get around them just because they were sitting there. We even had one instance where a semi-truck suddenly swerved and veered out in front of us on the highway for no apparent reason. But there's all of these little things in contrast to Germans, where they are very considerate drivers. Like the left lane is exclusively for fast drivers and for passing. They're not really going to pass you on the right side because it's forbidden. Or if there's even like traffic jams, they all scoot to the side so that emergency vehicles can get up the middle of a 2-lane road. Just that and a lot more just really seems like they have a much better grip on driving than the US. So it was just a little bit shocking. Not obviously terrifying, but it was definitely something that we noticed.
Another thing I did not realize we had gotten really used to here in Germany is their recycling and trash disposal systems. If you have not heard, they are really, really big on recycling here.
And we've done a whole video on this topic, so if you haven't watched that one, check it out because it is very extensive and there's a very thick book that we have to follow to do the trash system, but we've gotten used to it now.
Yeah, like it's become just part of our daily life now. And so it felt weird when we were on the airplane and the stewardess was coming by with just one trash bag for all of our trash. And we had our water bottles and we were thinking, wait a second, we put this in here too with the food trash? And it just kind of threw us off for a second. We had a double take. There were also multiple times when I had some kind of recyclable trash and I went to rinse it out, but then realized, oh, I don't need to do this. Or when we were at a restaurant or at a public place when we needed to throw something away, there weren't all the different spaces to throw them away and the different ways to separate it. It was usually just one trash can or just a trash and recycle, just two.
And even when we went shopping at home or went to the grocery store, and they were using tons of plastic bags when we were bagging up our groceries to take them home, whereas here we've really gotten used to bringing our own baskets or bags to get our groceries home. And also we noticed whenever we were at our family's house and we were eating sandwiches or getting sliced bread, that the stores were starting to actually double bag the bread with 2 plastic bags to keep the freshness. And that just seems like an easy way to cut the waste and also increase their profits by not eating up that money by putting 2 bags on one bread when they don't need to do that.
This one isn't necessarily a reverse culture shock or even a difference between Germany and the US, but as expats now, something that we have gotten used to is having to think about what time zone we're in and what time zone the people we want to call or text are in, and have to think through that time difference of when to call or when to text, or even not expecting to receive a text back until way later because they're asleep.
That was definitely something that I didn't realize I was in the mindset of until we got back home, and it was kind of a weird thing. I pointed out to Aubrey that whenever I would text someone, I would toss my phone to the side and I would just kind of not expect an answer back for hours and hours later, because here I am used to waiting until they actually woke up whenever we had already been in our day for a little while. But we would get text backs pretty immediately, but it would just kind of throw us off that suddenly we had these answers and then we could get plans moving a little bit faster. But whenever we do these videos where we highlight the differences between the US and other countries, or specifically Germany where we live now, we hope what we're getting across to you is that differences don't necessarily mean right or wrong. Some countries do things one way and other countries do some things the other way, but what we've really figured out is that no country really has everything figured out. And these are just our experiences that we've seen and just kind of some funny things that we've picked up on and noticed, and really normally pretty trivial matters.
And it's also just interesting coming from these 2 Western countries where I would assume that a lot of their cultural things are pretty similar, but we've gotten to experience and learn about a lot of these differences that they have.
But we hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button, also subscribe. And also, if you've ever experienced reverse culture shock or just little things whenever you went back to your home country after visiting another that you hadn't really picked up on before, leave those in the comments and let us know. And also, like Aubrey said, I'm learning German, so if you Germans are watching, leave your comments in German and let me practice a little bit. So thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in our next video. This is just kind of a waste, even just from a manufacturing standpoint. They could cut that out.
You said they could cuss that out. They could cuss it out. That's so nice.
You stupid bag. And also, we noticed when we were eating bread for like sandwiches.
Sandwiches. Bye. Bye, I forgot, that's my part. Just cut it off there.